Welcome to the Bluff the Spot podcast. My name is Lee Davey, and today my guest is none other than Shannon Shorr, Alabama's finest. Shannon is one of the most consistent live and online tournament players in the world, and is currently on one of the hottest streaks of his career. Shannon has earned more than 10 million playing live tournaments, and sitting in a cabinet somewhere in his house are trophies from the Poker Go Studios, the Bellagio Cup, the seminal Hard Rock Poker Open, the European Poker Tour, and the World Poker Tour. And in 2014, the Global Poker Index recognized Shannon Shorr as the 7th most successful live tournament player of the decade, and that is quite some feat. How has he managed to be so consistent? What are his training regime? What is life like now he has become a dad? And what is it like with the stress and anxiety of playing on your own dime? Today, we get to ask Shannon Shorr those questions and much more in the Bluff the Spot podcast. Now, without further ado, I'll shut the hell up and leave you in the capable hands of one of the best, Shannon Shorr. Where are you these days? Where are you coming from?
I'm in Las Vegas. I bought a place here last May and have mostly been around here lately.
Are you still got your standing desk, I see?
Yeah.
Are you still doing it?
It's kind of nice when you have a break from playing live poker because, like, if I'm at home working on stuff, I can actually stand. The live poker is just so much, sitting all the time. You go.
I got this thing, so I can sit on my ass and pedal my feet under the desk.
Oh, beautiful! That's what I need. How do you like it?
I've never used it actually because I'm not in my place. I'm actually looking after somebody's cat. I've been doing this trusted house sitter thing, traveling around looking after people's animals. So I'm in this luxurious redeveloped barn in Shropshire in England. And so I'm actually in the garden shed interviewing at the moment, Shannon, but don't, if I was interviewing Phil Ivey, I'd still be in a garden shed. So don't take it personally. So what have you been up to? How did the pandemic affect you when all that stuff happened? Because you was a live grinder at the time. Did it impact you at all in Vegas?
It pretty much totally shifted my lifestyle in the way that I switched to playing completely online poker during that time until the casinos eventually reopened, which was hugely instrumental in my development and like the recent success that I've had just to get all those hours in online. After Black Friday happened in 2011 or whatever it was, I played online poker very casually and just kind of would play some of the big series. I'd pop in if I was in Europe or something and play, but I was mainly traveling and playing live. So playing online during the pandemic was like immensely helpful in refining my game and making me more technically sound.
For the people listening, could you go into that a little bit more in depth in terms of how playing online poker could actually improve your live game? And you just disappeared again. There you go, you're back.
The great thing about online poker is that you get so many reps so quickly versus live poker. If you go to the casino, you're playing 40, 50 hands per hour. Online poker, you can play, several tables at a time, get dealt tons of hands very fast. It's just an awesome way to get repetition.
So is that all it is, repetition, or is there more to it than that?
It's definitely, I also work with solvers a lot. So, between play, it's basically a session. It'll look like I'll play a session. I'll review some hands with solvers and different training tools. So, it's playing poker professionally is like a full-time job if you want to make it, as you know. So there's a lot goes into it, but during the pandemic, it was just a lot of that, a lot of, seeing how different ranges interacted versus other different ranges and just becoming like much more technically sound than I was.
I guess is it actually the whole thing easier? I can imagine you go to a live stop and you play for so long and you're absolutely drained, and then you've got to go into the lab, but you're in Madrid or you're in Barcelona or you're in Tampa or something. Whereas online, I imagine you can get into a much better kind of systematized structure, right?
definitely there's something to it, just waking up in your own bed, being able to do things locally. I really enjoyed, that change. But at the same time, I've always been a person who loves like being out in the world. And that's what I love about live poker is like just how novel of an experience every time. If I had to choose right now between live and online, like I could only play one the rest of my life, it would definitely be live just because I just love, there's something about just showing up. That's the thing about live poker. Like people have, online, you can just sit at home, but live, we're actually all woke up, got out of bed and like drove to the casino and made it there. So there's a sort of an innate respect for all the people that you're there with.
You touched upon solvers there a little bit. Talk to me a little bit about your progression as a professional poker player in terms of how training and refining, not just your game, but your profession. How has that developed and what have been some of the key milestones and changes?
I'll touch on the solvers first. That's, pretty mandatory nowadays. If you're going to play high rollers and stuff, you need to be quite studied in, lots of different stack depths and like how you need to know how to play different positions against different positions. And that's like just, you learn that through solvers. A lot of people watch poker and like learn, through watching. I do that too. But for me, like really diving into the solvers and like being able to see how all the different hands, interact and like what you do with a wide range of hands, like being able to see that at a glance is just much better than just watching how Stephen Chidwick played this pot versus Ali. It's like, yeah, you learn something, but it's nice to like see it all at once. And a lot of people, a lot of people don't want, they dismiss solvers and stuff, but I think really that's often just coming from laziness. They don't want to like put in the work and stuff. For me at the top level, like I wouldn't be able to be where I am without having done that. So I'm really glad that I dedicated the time to doing that. And then otherwise professionally, it's just, I'm 15, 16 years into my career. So there's been a lot of like refining the process, a lot more cutting down on partying and just wasting time generally as a person. And my time is much more intentionally spent, whether it's, I'm either spending time with family or friends or studying or playing poker, basically.
Where do you stand on the theory of, we've got this go masculine energy, right? So I'm going to grind, I'm going to grind. And that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to eat frozen pizzas. And there's that kind of lifestyle. And because we've got to remember as a professional poker player, you've got a family as well. And we'll touch upon that in a minute. So that kind of go lifestyle versus do you know what? Like, I am literally not going to worry about the money. I'm not going to worry about the game. I'm not going to worry about falling behind. I'm just going to go and play in a paddling pool with my daughter for a week and just chill out. Like, and then the results come in as a result of that rejuvenation. Talk about the two different polarizations there.
We froze there for a minute.
Am I back? Yeah. Can you see me?
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I caught most of that, I think, and that's a really great question, and that's probably the biggest sort of dichotomy I face in as a professional poker player is, it's very like, just like I'm sure a lot of competitive businesses and career, you feel very pulled into them, right? Like you've got to go. Like if you want to be at the top, there's so much, you always know there's somebody out there working harder than you, and there's like a lot of incentive to just really go super hard. So that's super tough, especially like having a family now. Like when I get in these poker grinds, it's like very hard for me not to, like, if I bust a spot, if I bust a tournament, and basically my process is if I play a live tournament, I'll like note several hands over the course of the day. And then like when I get home, like until I get like run the spots on the solvers, like I can't exist and just relax. Yeah. So it's, I don't know, there's something about, and I've become more and more that like, I guess I'm more motivated now that I have a young daughter to like really bust it, during the poker grinds, because poker is very concentrated work generally. We'll play like, 7 to 10 days, like a lot of poker. And then there'll be times off. Thankfully, I just ended a kind of a pretty long grind all through the month of March and April. So I'm excited to relax for the next month. Excuse me.
Both of us have got the frog in our throat, I think.
Yeah. I'm excited to relax a little bit before the World Series of Poker because, like you mentioned, like relaxing and like being in the pool with your kids, and like that's what the essence of life is about. Like playing poker is great, making money is great, but like if you're not enjoying the ride, then what's the point? So kind of my approach, I hope going forward, is that during the concentrated work periods, I can like work really hard and try to like have little bits of time off to like maintain my sanity, because I often just lose it during these long grinds. It's very tough to, when you're just playing poker all day, it's not like the most rewarding experience, even when winning, it's like you're still just in there with guys battling and trying to take everybody's money. So it doesn't make me feel my best. Versus like this morning when I'm hanging with my daughter and just picking her up and seeing her giggle at me, or when we're out in the park slacklining yesterday. I mean, it's just total euphoria. So my approach is that I'm going to work really hard when it's required of me, and then just try to get into the deepest state of relaxation that I can when I don't have to.
On that, is there a moment has there been a moment in your career where you quite clearly need to rejuvenate, but you got bills to pay and you've been on a downswing and things aren't going right, maybe you're in makeup or whatever, and you've really just had to play when you didn't want to play? And how did that turn out?
Yeah, that's basically every World Series of Poker for me. You feel so compelled to just like play the entire time. This year, I'm telling myself, and on record on your podcast, that I'm going to slow down. I'm going to late register some tournaments. I'm going to take some days off and go to the gym, because it's just, it's mandatory for sustainability in my opinion. Yeah. But yeah, there's lots of, times during like ends of like long grinds where I don't really want to be there if I'm down swinging. I also play completely on my own dime. So I also I find myself quite stressed oftentimes just because it's my money at stake. A lot of guys, I think, probably don't deal with that as much because their livelihood isn't as affected mainly. Also just having a kid and stuff is, thankfully, things have been going really well. I've been working super hard, so I haven't had to deal with as much financial pressure, but still I got to say that I like think about the money a lot. Yeah.
How did you take the leap from being backed to playing on your own dime? Was it just a one thing and it just went on from there, or did you have to go back? Like, how did that work out?
I've actually never been backed.
Oh wow!
My career took a shape such where I had a ton of success early on, like 2006. I just like ran super well and was able to, make some money. And then I had things went pretty well buying some pieces and stuff. And I've never gone broke, thankfully. So that's maybe that's why I like feel the anxiety more, because like I don't want to go broke, and I'm not going to allow it to happen.
Okay, so let me ask you,
having never experienced that,
yeah, let me ask you a question on that then. How do you deal with that anxiety? And like, what are your kind of bankroll management philosophies, and how does risk taking fit into it? That type of thing.
I generally will. I guess I don't have like strict rules on how much I'll put in for any tournaments. I should say I do sell for some of the bigger stuff I play. I do sell some percentages, but I don't generally. I have a number for like that I'll generally put up for the maximum I'll put up for a certain tournament, and that's pretty much stayed the same over the last few years as I've like been pumping up my bankroll. I've been, I've added a little bit to that number for like my risk tolerance, I guess. But I'm definitely not one of those guys that there's, I must be in like the bottom quarter, bottom 20% of like risk tolerance as far as like, how much of my bankroll I'm willing to like lose in any given tournament and stuff. I prefer to just like, the way I look at it, like I have everything that I want in this life now. I haven't built my family and, I've worked hard personally to, be in a place where I'm, where I feel like I'm enough and that I am just very happy. So there's like having no risk of ruin is very important to me.
And I imagine, do you have a separate bankroll for poker versus like personal?
Not really, honestly. I kind of just keep everything together and free up cash from different investments I have as I need it.
You make a good point there. Talk about that actually, because I imagine when the World Series comes along, it can be such a make or break for anybody who's going in for the whole thing. So how important is it to have your money tied up in other things other than just poker, I guess?
I definitely like to free up a bunch of, whenever I know I'm going to be playing a lot of poker, I definitely like to free up a bunch of cash, because it's just like playing on a short bankroll. I've done that, like having only a limited amount of money available. And it's just not fun. Like when you're sitting there at the table and like in your subconscious, like when a decision is affected by the fact that, if I bust this spot, you know what I mean? I can't make this hero call that I feel is right, because if I'm wrong, I've got to wake up at 9 a.m. and go to Bank of America before the tournament. You know what I mean? So I like to have a lot of cash on hand so I can just like completely disappear into the grind and just like fire away and try to make the best decisions. So yeah, a lot of it for me is that, I'll try to have money on hand when series are going on, and then I'll sort of allocate stuff, money to other stuff as I can.
I remember
I'm not going to be playing.
I remember interviewing True Teller once, Timothy Kuznetsov, and I was asking him about fear, and he was telling me about a hand he was in where somebody put a bet in on the river, or so. I'm going to get the details wrong because I'm not a poker player and I can't remember. But it was something like the correct play for him, solver wise, right, and intuitive wise, was to check raise something like $800,000, right? and he couldn't do it. So like the money at that moment was too much for him, and he couldn't pull the trigger, and he folded because of fear, right? Can you remember an instance like that that happened in your career that stands out for you?
Absolutely. I mean, that's something I think all poker players can identify with. It's like the classic case is like if you're, deep in a tournament and you just aren't able to execute. And it's happened to me infinite times, as my development has, as I develop and grow in this business, I really work hard to like, whenever I sit at the poker table, I'm ready. Like I have to be there to execute, like I have to be willing to set the money aside and just like, that's the ultimate like goal for me, is like getting to a point where I can never think about it. Cause it's always there in the subconscious, right? Like fear is, we're all driven by fear, in my opinion, or held back by fear, I should say. Yeah. So that's, any poker player you talk to, will be able to tell you that he or she has experienced something like that, I'm sure.
How do you get better at executing? How do you get better at divorcing yourself from the money? Is it pure experience, or is there something that you could actually do to train yourself, do you think?
For me, I try to really slow myself down. I'll really try to pick up my meditation during a poker series, and really try to after each tournament, I try to reset and have a meditation session where I like go into the next tournament, with a clear head, like forgetting about, the last one. When you're busting like 10 tournaments in a row, it can be really tough. And then you get in there and you're like, nearing the money or nearing a final table. It's so easy to just like not make a decision or not make a decision out of fear. Right. Because you're like, I really need this cash, or I really need this final table. But I try to reset myself between each tournament and be ready to just like give it my all each time and not worry about how things have been going. I should also say that just becoming a better poker player by like studying and working hard will also has and will help with that, because it just like you're more knowledgeable about how you're supposed to play the spot. And it just, and you just make decisions, out of like the theory of the game, or like you trust yourself more as opposed to if you just don't know the spot.
It almost feels like making a move by the theory of the game gives you a get out of jail free card. It's like I don't play anymore, but it just makes me feel like, okay, I just need to follow these rules in my head, and then that's the right play. I don't have to beat myself up afterwards because I intuitively decided I was going to do X, Y, and Z.
That's well said. And I definitely think that's been a thing for me. One of the reasons I fell in love with studying poker theory was for that reason, because I would just often, when I was just out there winging it, traveling to Barcelona or Australia or Vegas or wherever I was, and just showing up and just like making a decision with no real like foundation, right? I was just trying to make the best decisions I could. And then I'd, text 10 people and ask them what they thought about the hand. But like, yeah, having theory, it is kind of your, get out of jail card. That isn't to say, of course, that you should only play by theory. You should exploit, make a lot of exploit decisions based on opponents that you're playing. But it's definitely nice to have like a foundation of how to play, or at least how to become close to knowing how to play spots, and then you don't have to beat yourself up, because I used to beat myself up endlessly. I was an extremely stressed guy. As a result, I would party a ton, and just like it was a pretty insane cycle. I was largely miserable despite traveling, having a lot of fun. It was just like I was stressed and exhausted always.
In a way, it sounds like you're talking about, and you can expand on this, you're talking about the difference between being an amateur and turning pro. So although you are a pro, you're not actually behaving like a pro, and now you are behaving like a pro. Can you just talk about those distinctions a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. I've just learned so many tricks of the trade through all these years of doing it, right? I know how to, and just learning yourself, right? As you get older, you understand like what makes you tick, what situations you perform better in. So I just treat the game a lot. My approach is a lot more professional than it used to be. I used to also, just growing up, being a single guy, I had a lot more anxiety about like what kind of path my life was going to take. I didn't know what sort of relationship I was going to have with women. I didn't, know what my future is. Now I'm married and have a daughter and have a house, and like I'm building my life. I just have a lot more security and less anxieties bouncing in my head. So I'm able to dedicate more time to, working hard or doing things that are good for myself or my family.
It's like the tick box of life, isn't it? Okay, got a wife, I don't worry about that anymore. All healthy, great, perfect. I like it. I get what you think. I think a lot of poker players, professional poker players, they have this rigid personality pattern, this need to systematize and to know and rationalize, what's going on, and like I've got this covered, I've got that covered. I see that quite a lot. So it's very interesting. You said earlier on about solvers, that some people can slag them off or whatever, and that partly is because there could be obviously like laziness. I wonder, you talk to a lot of people. How does fear play into it when it comes to solvers? And just hear me out a second. I recently got into a taxi in London, and I was talking to a taxi driver, and he was telling me about they still have to do what's called the knowledge, which is like an exam of all the routes in London. Even though they have GPS, it doesn't matter. You still need to study every single route, and then you have a test. And I'm like, wow, the pressure must be insane, like because you've forked out so much money for your taxi and your licenses. In poker, as an outside observer who doesn't play the game, and so I might be completely off here, if there's a solver and a perfect way of playing every hand in every single situation, is there a fear that comes into it that you will never get to know enough? Like, how do you balance that?
Yes, I think for a lot of people, like the intimidation of like, if say they look at their first solve and they see, they see a hand being played in a way that makes zero sense. I remember this as I was first getting into using Pio, and you're just like, okay, no, that makes no sense. I would never play a hand this way. All right, all solvers out the window. I'm never going to learn poker this way. But yeah, the more time that you spend with them and just like the ability to see different trends, I think it's immensely helpful. Yeah, and there's still, every day when I get home and look up a solve, I discover something. I'm like, wow, I would never have found this play in game, just because it's so difficult, right? We're not computers, poker is it's kind of like the more you know, the more you don't know, basically. It's just an incredibly complicated game. Every spot is so difficult, different stack depths, different hands get played different ways at different stack depths. It's absolutely fascinating stuff, but I plan on continuing my journey with it. It's pretty cool stuff.
And then it sounds like, because your excitement of it, your disposition lends itself towards that kind of learning. And then I imagine there are some poker players, maybe the more feely, intuitive, even if it's not laziness, they just can't store the information, learn how to adapt, how to play that kind of way. It's just not going to be for everybody, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Also, there's tons of different ways to make a living playing poker, right? Like if you're playing in some private cash game or something, like solvers probably aren't going to, be of much use to you. If you're just playing with like all people who don't play professionally and people that, just make totally erratic decisions and nothing is at all like theoretical, then it's probably not going to be. I would still advise, I think everybody should have like an understanding and like a baseline for learning spots as a poker player, but it's definitely not going to be, versus me, if I'm playing in the Poker Go studio with a lot of great players, like the content is much more applicable.
So I haven't played poker now for many years, right? But there was a time when I tried to be a professional poker player, right? Long time ago. Now, if I decided that I wanted to get back into it again, straight off the bat, would you say that part of my growth would be to be using things like Pio and to learning solvers, even at that recreational stroke, semi-professional level?
I would say so, yes. But I think you would also need to, I don't do any coaching. I've never really, I've always been a bit of like a lone wolf in the way that I've kind of always done my own thing. So I'm not familiar with like the best ways to get off the ground, but I would say like linking up with some sort of like study group and seeing people that can like actually show you how this software works. Cause it's a lot to, learn totally on your own. So like, I would say community, like having a community to learn with is, immensely helpful, and like a nice mix of like both watching poker. Like I love to watch streams and like videos that are made by good players. So I think like actually watching the actual game that's going on versus like just using solvers is super important as well, because often the actual game of poker that's being played is much different than the way the solvers and the computer want it to be played. So it's good to like have a feel for what's actually going on versus like what's happening in solver world, and being able to sort of like compare those two and get a sense of ways that you need to be deviating from the solver's decisions.
I imagine as well, incorporating different forms and types of study into your profession just keeps things a little bit spicy, right? You'd get a little bit bored if you was just doing the same thing all the time, right?
100%. Yeah, I can only stare at a solver for so long before I start to lose my mind.
I remember Michael Soyser telling me that part of the training with it is just reading the thing. So there's the understanding of it, but there's just being able to read and understand the data, let alone the poker side of it, right?
Totally. And it's so much data in your face. It's kind of like like anything, when you're overwhelmed by data, it can be too much. So like just being ready to sit there and like try to zone in and not be distracted by like everything that's being thrown at you can be tricky sometimes as well.
So listening to your excitement on this, I mean, just to ask you the question, I mean, so with the advent of solvers, do you think this has made poker improved poker, or do you think it's kind of dragged poker down a little bit, or made poker a less attractive prospect? What's your thoughts on
that? It's kind of been cool because people have definitely gotten better as a result. Like lots of people, even if people don't, study solvers and stuff, they generally just see how everyone's playing and have adapted. They see how good players play and they've adapted in a way that a lot of people play a strategy that just isn't terrible anymore. They don't in a way where they don't lose too much money, but it's also like all the streams and like the growth of poker. I mean, the numbers are just through the roof. Like live poker, online poker are both like the numbers are huge. Tons of people are showing up to play. So it's been kind of a little bit of both. People have gotten better, but a lot more people are involved. So it's a pretty booming industry still.
And you had your daughter, so congratulations, Nora, right?
Yes, thank you.
So what adjustments have you had to make now that you become a dad when it comes to your profession?
I took a decent amount of time. It was great. She actually arrived, I think it was the day, or we went to the hospital the day after the World Series of Poker ended. And then she came the next day. So that was pretty cool. So she let me, I took a lot of time off, during that period. I played a little bit in the month of December at Bellagio, but it was super cool to just, be there for a lot of those early moments, to 100% be there and, see her growing and seeing her come to life. Luckily, Joy is just like the most incredible mom. She has a degree in elementary education. She's like, I always say she's both the best student and the best teacher that I've ever met. So she's basically built for motherhood. So she's been awesome during, the concentrated periods where I play, if I'm gone for 12 hours a day for 5 days in a row. She's been awesome during that. So other adjustments is, I just, when I bust a tournament, I generally come home and try to help her, give her a break and stuff. Versus, if you're during the single guy days, you bust a tournament, you go do whatever. But now we're working as a unit, to help try to make her, give her the best life we can. So I realize that my time, if I'm not working, it's, best spent helping out at home.
How are you with that? I think one of my weaknesses and something that I still have to work on is getting kind of anxious about the division of time in a family dynamic, right? Like if you take today, for example, I woke up this morning and I had a coaching client because I'm a life coach, and I had a coaching client at 9:00, and then the client canceled, and there was a part of me that felt guilty that I then didn't give that time to my wife because I'm drawn to my work and I can always fill it up. And at the same time, here's my wife looking after our child who also has her dreams and her vision and her purpose and stuff. And that pulls at me sometimes. Where do you sit on that?
I can totally identify with that. If I'm up here in the office, even if I'm working on stuff, it's like I feel drawn to go downstairs and help out. It's the anxiety is always there in the back of the head. You hear the baby crying from the other room or something. It's, I guess the way I look at it is like, we have to make our living, right? So it's all for every individual. It's going to be different, finding the balance between, what goes into your career and what goes into, how important it is to be there with your family. And, obviously we want to be there as much as possible, but, it's not possible to 100% of the time be there. So it's definitely something I'm working, feeling, it's a first time experience for me, first time dad. So I'm just like kind of feeling it out as I go.
Well, I got two, like I got a 21-year-old and a 5-year-old. And one of the things that I had to come to terms with was the fact that I actually, I love my kids, but that my kids aren't my everything. So my kingdom that I'm trying to build and the legacy that I want to leave behind is sometimes more important than my kids, which was a really difficult thing for me to be able to accept that that's how I felt, and then communicate it to my wife when it's kind of like, hey, what's going on? And it's kind of like, well, this is just how I'm drawn, Do you have any comments on that at all?
Can you speak more about like what you mean by the legacy you're trying to leave?
Yeah, so it's kind of like, so I'm building a company to help people quit alcohol, right?
Oh,
and
right, yeah.
And if you're on social media or you're in the pub talking to people, the vibe I generally get is, oh, my kids come first, right? Like my kids come first, my kids are everything, then my wife or my husband. And I would be thinking about that. And I was like, well, I would actually be lying if I said that, because actually building my business and making that successful actually is more important to me than spending time with my kids. And I think that's because I know my wife's got it covered. And I also know that when I was younger, my dad didn't spend any time with me. So I grew up kind of like a bit like that anyway. But just being brave enough with myself to be able to confront that and to be open with that allowed me to then have more open conversations with my wife about division of time,
Yeah, I guess I haven't experienced that yet, because my life and career, it's been mostly like focused on like, building, I guess like making myself money to like set my life up. I'm 36 now, I guess. I haven't had the opportunity to like give back in a great way. I haven't had the opportunity to do that yet. Or I should say I haven't yet. I'm sure I've had the opportunity had I wanted, to do that. But I'm structuring my life such, and now I'm getting closer and closer to be able to like give back in a big way. That isn't to say like I've made lots of charitable donations, of course, and stuff, but with my time and sort of like building, I haven't been able to, give back in a major way. So I guess I look forward to doing that alongside, now that I'm like have a lot of things set up in my life. I look forward to, going out with my daughter and volunteering and, hopefully building something as a family in a way that, and giving back in that way where I can, share the experience. I guess that's my hope.
I guess the question that rolls on from that is, now you have a family or a daughter, because you was always a family when you was with your wife, but now you have a daughter. Is your mindset kind of like, and I'm not being very literal here, but is your mindset kind of like, okay, I have to earn as much money as I can, as quickly as I can, to set ourselves up so I can be with my family? Or is it, I want to win X amount of bracelets, I want to be in a Poker Hall of Fame, I want to still be playing and doing this and smashing it and being the world's best until in my 60s and 70s, and I've got to balance my family? Like, where is that with you?
Yeah, I'd say I'm much less driven by like poker accomplishments. For me, poker has been, I absolutely love it. And I love like being near the top of the industry now is just like a totally euphoric feeling for me. It's like some of that, like it's about as happy as I've ever been in my career. It's just been really fun to run really well lately. But it's like poker for me is still like I try to like as much as I can. I want to separate it and it just be like one, aspect of my life. I don't want my life to revolve around like playing poker professionally. So yeah, I want to I'm gonna use it as much as I need to like make the money that I need to like live the lifestyle and have time to spend with my family, if that makes sense.
It is interesting. It does make sense. But it is interesting that I know poker's not a sport, but if you look at F1 or you look at soccer or basketball, those people never want to stop, do they? Like they your Cristiano Ronaldo's or your Ryan Giggs, when they get to 40, they still want to play forever and ever and ever. Yet in poker, we do get those parts, but a lot of the other time it's kind of like, no, I cannot do this forever. Like I need to at some point have an exit strategy. What is it, Shannon? Is it mental? Is it physical? Is it a bit of everything? What is it?
Yeah, that's the most fascinating part about poker is like you can't really play too casually and expect to succeed. And that's one of my biggest fears, and what like continues to drive me is like, if I just show up, once a week or once every 2 weeks and never put any study time and just spend time with my family, like that anxiety is there that I'm going to fall behind. So that's like one of the hardest things for me is trying to decide how much time to dedicate to it. And now that I'm being a little more honest with myself, like I am like those, F1 drivers or, Tiger Woods or whatever. Like I want to, if a tournament's going on at Wynn and I'm here in Las Vegas, like 3 or 4 years from now, like I'm going to want to go down and play it. I'm sure, but yeah, that's the hard part. I guess I would love to get to a point, and you'll hear a lot of poker players talk about this, where I could just afford to, play a lot more recreationally. And, because I love the game so much, but I realize that it will often be at the expense of my bottom line if I'm not putting the time in.
Yeah, there is that. I see this when I'm on the Triton tour, it's people know that if there are some quarters where it's like, okay, if I step away from the game, I come back, it's not too bad. And there's others like, no, if I step away from the game and I'm not doing the work, I'm really going to slip down the ladder and it's going to affect my bottom line big time. So I have to make a decision about whether or not this is going to be my career or not. Like it's pretty intense, right?
Definitely. Yeah, it's tough. But at the same time, I'm a huge, like I've taken long stretches off of poker as well. I remember taking like a 5 or 6 month stretch off maybe 5 years ago, where Joy and I traveled all through South America. And then later we did the same kind of trip through Southeast Asia. And that, like having those experiences and, having that time away was super helpful for, giving me sustainability and like giving me the feeling that I've like had these type of experiences, otherwise, like if you're just working nonstop and you're never experiencing like the abundance and awesomeness of life, then what's the point a little bit? So
I think a lot of that is, it's going to come with experience and getting older as well. But a lot of that surely is just slowing the fuck down, right? So I can imagine. Well, I know when I got caught in my poker loop, it was like a mistress. I just couldn't stop thinking about it. I wanted to play it all the time. Screw the kids, screw the wife. I just wanted to play. There was a buzz. There was something about it that just kind of dragged me in and was all consuming, right? And before you know it, you haven't like left your bedroom or you haven't left a casino for like a month. And then as you get older, you just kind of, if you slow down, you can start to ask yourself, what am I doing? Like, like how important was slowing down and, less, I guess, masculine do go energy, and incorporating and embracing that feminine energy in you, that flow, that creativity, that dancing, singing, art, whatever it is. Like, how important has that balance been for you, Shannon?
It's been great. Whenever I do experience that stuff, I really love relaxing, and like for many years I traveled nonstop, and then the pandemic was a bit of a blessing in disguise for me. Just in the way that it allowed me to, be in one place and let my mind, just chill out a little bit. I'd since just like been going for 10 years and just novel experience after novel experience. And just like my mind, it was just absolute craziness, traveling all over the world, going full speed, gambling, high stakes. So like being able to sit back and chill and just like be in one place, I think was kind of beneficial for me.
Yeah, I think that must have happened for a lot of people, right? All of a sudden, you're stuck in the house, and you've got a lot of time to reflect.
Hmm.
Not everybody was able to just switch and change and play different games. Some just didn't want to. So it's just a classic example of out of every pile of shit there's a diamond in there somewhere, right? If you choose to look at life that way. Um, I'm going to ask you. I got some cards here.
All right.
They're all feelings and emotions, right? So I'm going to shuffle them. I'm just going to ask you. I'm going to pull them out randomly, and so it'll be like anger or something like that. And you feel free. You can either talk about a story that you recollect from poker that relates to the feeling. You could talk about your experience of that feeling in poker and how it's been to your detriment or how it's been to your success. We'll just go with the flow, see what it is, right?
Okay.
Let's have a look. Where we go? Bitter.
Okay. Bitterness. Yeah, that's definitely something that I've experienced in poker. I think a lot of people have when things aren't going your way. Um, it's just so easy to be bitter at the guy on top or the guy who's like beating you out of every pot. There's countless times where I've just like told myself, oh, I can't stand this guy. I hate this guy who's just beating me in poker pots, or this guy's just on top of the industry, just like total just jealousy and envy and just like being bitter, like why, an entitlement. Why am I not the guy like having all this success? Yeah, so that's just a classic case, and you'll see it. You know, I'll get some comments from people now that I like things are going really well for me. I'll see it in other people, and I don't like. I remember being that guy. You know what I mean? So I don't like. I'm at a place where I've experienced a lot of this stuff, so I don't have any judgment. It's just like fun to observe it all go down, and yeah, that's definitely an emotion that I experienced.
So it's like a little bit of Schadenfreude as well, I guess, like hoping getting enjoyment in somebody else's kind of misfortune. Yes, he's fucking lost at last. I feel happy. I got a follow-up question on that actually. How has the status gig affected you? And what I mean by that is poker is generally, women don't all come and beat me up here, is generally a load of guys around a table. There's no physicality in it. So you can't beat me up. It's not the biggest guy who's going to succeed. And all of a sudden, the kid who was bullied in the playground can all of a sudden bully everybody at the table, right? So you're there to take men's money. You're there to emasculate men. How is that? Talk about that a little bit, and how has it impacted you? Have you felt being like the peacock at the table, and you like that kind of thing? You've been humble. Talk about the whole status thing and how it's impacted you.
Yeah, being at the poker table is one of the most fascinating places on the planet to be, in my opinion, because you just get to see every different type of emotion play out. And I've experienced every different type of emotion at the table. It's just so being under the stress that you are, where you're both playing for pride, your ego's on the line, your money's on the line. Often your livelihood will be determined by how it goes. So you just get to see lots of raw emotion. I definitely earlier on in my career, I would, make comments and stuff and, just try to be like a badass at the table. At this point, I'm just like so, grateful that I just like to show up and like, I see all these things go down. Like in Florida, some guy was just going off at me recently, actually. It hasn't happened too often. It hasn't happened to me lately too often, just because I think people like have more of a respect for me now. You know what I mean? When people are doing well, they just like don't attack you, sort of. But yeah, I mean, you see that type of stuff. It's really fascinating. I like Joy and I love, like, one of the things we love doing in our spare time is what we like these shows like Love is Blind and Love Island, and seeing like all these couples and like different personal dynamics. And then we even have this YouTube therapist that we watch that talks about the, all of these people and different, like, I'm fascinated by, human interaction and different, human dynamics. So like, I love just it's for me, it's like a video game, showing up each day and just like trying to learn about just seeing everybody, all their emotions play out, and trying to dial into my own and seeing like what makes me tick and what makes me angry. It's been a fun journey.
How have you, I mean, it's the same type of thing, I guess, but how have you handled your ego over the years? Is there been a time when it's gone out of control?
Yeah. When I was running bad, like 4 or 5 years ago, after having early success, that was a really tough time for me when I went like a 4 or 5 year stretch where things were just shitty. I was just like largely miserable, just like losing. Thankfully, I was never in real like financial danger because I had so much success early on. But at the same time, I was just seeing my net worth plummet and plummet and plummet. And I was just seeing different guys go up as I went down. And, my ego just, what I mean? I had to learn to check it at the door for sure.
Let's go. Another feeling for you. Relieved.
I'd say I've experienced a lot of that lately, just having a lot of success and just, things going well in tournaments. It's like when I get some time to reflect on all that I put into this business and, to kind of be where I am now, it's just like a lot of relief, and to not be going through the same, bitterness and like seeing my ego flare up, like just not having to deal with that is, I can rest easy. I'm sleeping a little bit better these days.
Talk about flow. Talk about what happens rocking up to, like, if you was to go play a poker tournament tonight, now after we finish, you're probably going to be feeling super confident, super relaxed. I'm not saying you think you're going to win, but something would have changed. Like something changes when things are going well versus when things are shit. There's a lightness, there's everything that changes. Talk about that for yourself personally. Yeah,
that's definitely been something that I've experienced as I've had more success. I think both building the confidence, like building my knowledge of the game. Just there's less spots. Like 5 years ago, there would be so many spots where I showed up and I just had no idea like what to do in the spot. Now I would also, this is something maybe people can grow from, is like poker spots aren't like, you don't either get them right or wrong in the way that you either passed or failed. Often the spots aren't like a pass or fail decision. And I think that's the way I used to beat myself up a lot, because I would I'd text people right after, and if like 7 out of the 10 said, "Oh, fold," then I would just like be like, "Oh, I just totally, I fucked up. I just failed." Right. But often the amount you're losing, a lot of these decisions are often like super close. And this is something you'll learn like when you start studying solvers, is that, the amount of EV that you give up in a lot of these spots is very little in the event that you do get it wrong. So I think just like learning that and understanding that, there's going to be a lot of spots that are very close, that are supposed to be mixed. Sometimes you call, sometimes you fold, and understanding that, being the decision should be made more about when it is a close spot like that, you make your decision based on just like game flow and like the flow of, how you're feeling about the moment, more so than it's not just like you did it right or you did it wrong, if that makes sense.
Well, when you said about texting the friends, what came up for me was the importance of surrounding yourself with a tribe of people where you can talk through the hand. So I remember when I tried to be a professional poker player and I had a coach and he said to me, I was playing some game and I raised some amount. And he said to me, "Why did you raise that amount?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know. Everybody does." And he was castigating me for not having a reason for raising a certain amount or betting a certain amount. He was like, "So you're just following what other people are doing?" "Yeah." "Why are they doing it?" I don't know. Because the way that I was thinking about poker was I wasn't thinking. I didn't want to think. I just wanted a set of instructions. I wanted a solver, but at the same time, I didn't want to build up that fundamental the Sklansky fundamental of poker, which is really important, right? Most people say, how do you know if he's a good poker player or not? Well, just by talking to him, just by talking to him and asking him a few questions, and you'll get to know how he thinks about the game, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's kind of a cool, like in anything in life, like I feel like I'm at the point now, like if I'm playing golf or if I'm playing, yesterday I'm getting on the Slack line with Joy and I'm just like Googling like tips for, how to be more successful at it. I think that's a really cool way to approach just like building skill sets, is just like try to dive deeper into them and just having more knowledge about stuff. It both makes it more fun, being the better you are at things, for me, in my experience, they're more fun.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of the way I'm trying to approach life, I guess.
Okie dokie. Let me give you one last one. Bored.
Man, that's not one that I experience very often in poker. Like I mentioned earlier, I love any given day, like every live tournament, I just love, because it's always so novel, and you're always going to see something different. You're always going to like see some different type of person. So I wouldn't say I'm ever really bored with poker, because it's just so many awesome. It checks so many boxes in the way that it's, mentally it gets you going. It gets me out of the house. I get to be around friends. I would say the only time I may ever experience that is online. Like if I'm just like really ready to get out of the house and I'm playing one table or something. But yeah, that's not something I experience very often.
What do you like when you're playing live? Because these days when you're watching people play live, 95% of people are on their mobile phone, right? They're playing, they're in a 100K and they're playing Wordle with their mates while stopping to be 3-bet by 85 grand or something. What's going on there? Is it just players get so good that they know when they can drift and they know when they need to concentrate? And what about yourself?
Yeah, I'm the opposite. I think you're right that so many people are on their phones all the time. But I've never been like somebody that just like dicks around on my phone that often. I prefer like real life interaction, and particularly playing live poker. I love to it's like a meditation for me, like to just sit there and just watch all the action go down. That isn't to say, sure, there's sometimes in like a smaller tournament or something, it's day one where I'll be, trolling some friends, texting around or something. But generally I like to, be there and just like watch all the action going on and see what kind of stuff I can learn.
Yeah, and I guess the more you walk, the more what I've observed is, because I obviously watch a lot of poker, the more you're interacting with people around the table, the status comes in again, right? Like, and I see people getting really, really pally with people, and then they're able to use that as a strength later on when they're faced with a tough decision, because they've built up. It's almost like that Robert Cialdini kind of law of reciprocity. Like, I'm going to help you out and I'm going to be your mate. And then obviously not pro, but like pro recreational player. And then they're softer with them because they built up this pally stuff. So I often think that there's a real merit, especially in the games where there's recreationals, of being alert and alive around the table and having that conversation, that gift of gab, right?
I agree. Yeah. Presence, like when somebody's present at the table, I think it's just much harder. If you see them just sitting there, like they're paying attention to the game, it's like, I think people are going to likely they're probably not going to like go after you in a big spot, because they just think you're more aware. They may be less likely to bluff you. And just presence in general in life, right? It's such a like wonderful thing to see. And, whenever you're just walking around and you see somebody, just playing with their kid and not on their phone, I really try to dial into that as much as possible.
And Shannon, it's been great to talk to you. I'm going to ask you one last question and I'll let you run off to your beautiful family. This is the Bluff the Spot podcast. What is your favorite bluff? Can you think of one that you did that was like you're really proud of?
My favorite bluff. There's been a few of them. I can remember one like it was Bellagio in 2007, where it was a relatively simple spot where just a guy raised, somebody called, I called, I like check called a flush draw, and then I think the river turn went check and the river. We were at a final table, and this was like a pretty important final table for me, and I just like ran this big. I just moved all in with my missed flush draw, and this guy tanked forever. When they tank forever and fold, it's just like the purest feeling when those cards go to the dealer.
Was this when you made the bluff? Was this before solvers or after solvers?
This was way before. This was like 2007 or something. But I can just remember, like at the time, it being like such a, I went on to win the tournament, and it being such a monumental bluff for like where I was in my career. You know what I mean? And it just like made me feel really good. Nowadays, it's like you don't really feel the bluffs anymore. Like I probably ran infinite bluffs, in this recent Poker Go series or whatever. But it's like you don't even think about them because you just know that like, okay, I'm supposed to bluff this combo on this. Like I got the good run out. I'm supposed to bluff. So you don't like. Nowadays, I don't feel them as much as like earlier on in my career. It was just huge for me. So
we found a little benefit in not knowing what the fuck we're doing when we're playing hands. Shannon, it's been lovely. Thank you for being our guest. Really appreciate talking to you as always, and may your good run continue, brother.
Thank you, Lee. Great talking with you.